The smell never leaves you. Blood and gangrene and mud and gasoline all mixed together. I smell it every day. My wife says I'm imagining it, that it's been years, but I know better. It's in my clothes, my hair, my skin. It's in my lungs. I drove an ambulance for the American Field Service in France. 17 months. Spring of 1917 to the end of the war. I was 22 when I signed up, fresh out of Yale. Thought I was being noble. Couldn't fight. Bad eyesight. They rejected me twice. But I could drive. I could help. Make a difference without firing a gun. They don't tell you what helping actually means. My name is William Hartford. Boston family. Old money. My father wanted me to stay home, work in the business. Said the war wasn't our concern. But I'd read about Belgium, about the refugees, about what was happening over there. Felt like something I had to do. The romantic notion of it all, driving through the French countryside, saving lives, being part of history. I had this image in my head from the recruitment posters. Clean ambulances with red crosses. Grateful wounded soldiers. Noble sacrifice. Christ, I was stupid. Training was in Paris, 2 weeks. They taught us how to drive the Ford Model T ambulances, how to navigate by shell fire, how to apply tourniquets and pressure bandages. Basic stuff. One instructor, American guy who'd been doing it since 1914, he tried to tell us what it would really be like, tried to prepare us. We didn't listen, couldn't comprehend what he was saying. The words made sense, but we couldn't connect them to reality. It was like he was describing something from another planet. I was assigned to a section supporting French divisions near Verdun. Got there in May of 1917. The offensive was winding down, but the wounded kept coming. Always kept coming. My first run was supposed to be easy. Milk Run, they called it. Pick up wounded from a field hospital 3 miles back from the line. Transport them to the base hospital another 10 miles back. Simple. Safe. Get my feet wet. I remember climbing into that ambulance. It was a beautiful spring morning. Sun was shining. Birds singing. The countryside looked almost peaceful if you ignored the distant rumble of artillery. I had no idea, no concept of what I was about to see, about to become. They loaded 4 wounded soldiers into the back. I didn't look, just focused on driving, getting them to safety, being professional. One of them died before we made it 5 miles, just bled out in the back while I drove. I heard him stop breathing, heard the other wounded men calling for me to stop. I kept driving. What else could I do? That was my first day. By June, they moved us closer to the front, right up to the edge of no man's land during pushes. That's when I understood what the job really was. We'd wait in these staging areas, sometimes old barns, sometimes just craters, while the infantry went over the top. The artillery would start, shells screaming overhead for hours. The ground shook so hard your teeth rattled, then the whistle would blow and you'd hear them go. Thousands of men climbing out of the trenches and running toward the German lines. Then you'd wait. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Then the wounded would start coming back. At first, it was the walking wounded, men who could still move on their own. Shot through the arm, shrapnel in the leg, faces peppered with debris. They'd stumble back through the mud, eyes wide in shock. We'd patch them up quick and load them in. Then came the stretcher cases. I remember the first time I had to drive into no man's land to pick up wounded, 3rd week of June, big French push near Chemin des Dames. The attack had stalled. Men were stuck out there, caught in the wire, pinned down by machine gun fire. They needed ambulances forward, right up to the edge. My hands shook so bad I could barely start the engine. My partner, kid named Danny Morrison from Chicago, he was white as a sheet. We'd volunteered together, gone through training together. Good kid. Wanted to be a doctor. We drove up the communication trench as far as we could, then had to go overland, out into the open. German artillery was still falling. Random, you'd see a shell burst and just hope the next one wasn't coming your way. The wounded were everywhere. Some were crawling back toward our lines. Others just lay there, screaming, begging for help. You had to make choices. Who could you save? Who was too far gone? Who could you reach without getting killed yourself? We loaded 4 men. One was missing both legs. Another had his jaw blown off. Third had a chest wound, sucking air, drowning in his own blood. Fourth seemed okay until we got him in the ambulance and realized half his back was gone. I drove back, faster than I should have. Hit every bump and crater, heard them screaming in the back. Couldn't help it. Had to get them out. Had to get back before... Shell landed 20 yards ahead of us. The concussion flipped the ambulance on its side. When I came to, Danny was dead. Piece of shrapnel through his neck. The 4 wounded men in the back. 3 of them were dead, too. The 4th was still alive, still screaming. I pulled him out, dragged him back to the aid station. Left Danny in the ambulance. They sent me back out an hour later. You become numb after a while. You have to. Otherwise, you'd go insane. I learned to sort the wounded without thinking. Triage. That's what they called it. You'd look at a man and in 2 seconds decide if he was worth loading. Could he survive the drive? Was the wound too severe? Would he die anyway? The ones you left behind, they knew. You could see it in their eyes. They'd reach for you, grab your uniform, beg you not to leave them. You'd pull away and move to the next one. Because if you stopped, if you let yourself feel it, you'd never move again. I saw things that summer that I can't describe to people. My family asks about the war sometimes. I tell them I drove an ambulance, helped the wounded. They nod and smile and think they understand. They don't understand anything. I saw a man with his intestines hanging out, trying to push them back in with his bare hands. Saw another with his face burned off by mustard gas, nothing left but raw meat and white bone. Saw boys younger than my little brother crying for their mothers while their lives drained into the French mud. Saw a man cut in half by a shell, top half still alive, still conscious, asking me if he'd be okay. What do you say to that? I lied, told him he'd be fine. He died while I loaded someone else. The smell in the back of the ambulance. Death has a smell. Blood and shit and infected wounds and fear. You'd try to clean it out between runs, but it soaked into the wood, the canvas. Some ambulances smelled so bad the wounded would vomit from it. Add that to everything else. We worked around the clock during offensives. 48 hours straight sometimes. No sleep. No food. Just drive, load, drive, unload, drive back, over and over. Your hands would shake from exhaustion. Your eyes would blur. You'd start seeing things that weren't there. I ran off the road once, just fell asleep at the wheel. Woke up in a ditch. 3 wounded men in the back. One of them had died in the crash. Broken neck. The other 2 were screaming at me, asking why I'd done it, asking if I was trying to kill them. Maybe I was. Maybe part of me wanted to drive that ambulance straight into a shell burst and end it. End the endless parade of broken bodies, the endless screaming, the endless dying. But I didn't. I got back on the road and kept driving. August was the worst. The French threw everything they had at the German lines. Massive offensive. Casualties beyond counting. We ran out of stretchers, out of bandages, out of space in the hospitals. They'd stack the wounded in the field hospitals like cordwood, 3 deep sometimes. The ones on the bottom would suffocate under the weight. I saw surgeons operating by candlelight in old barns. Saw them sawing off limbs without anesthesia because they'd run out. Saw them making choices about who got morphine and who had to die screaming. One doctor, French guy, been there since 1914, he just stopped in the middle of an operation, put down his saw, walked outside, shot himself in the head. Nobody blamed him. We kept working. What else could we do? By September, we'd lost half our section. Not killed, though we lost 3 drivers that way. Most just broke, had mental breakdowns, couldn't drive anymore, couldn't function. Tommy Baker from Philadelphia started crying one day and couldn't stop. Just sat in his ambulance, tears streaming down his face, whimpering. They sent him home. Robert Chen, no, wait, his name was Robert Brennan, from San Francisco. He started laughing during a run. Hysterical laughter while wounded men screamed in the back. Couldn't make him stop. They had to pull him out of the ambulance. He kept laughing while they took him away. I wondered when it would be my turn, when my mind would finally snap under the weight of it all. But it didn't. I just got harder, colder, more efficient. I could load an ambulance in under 3 minutes now, could assess wounds at a glance, could drive through artillery fire without flinching, could ignore the screaming, the begging, the dying. I became a machine. That's what the job required. Emotion was a luxury we couldn't afford. The Americans arrived in force that fall. Fresh troops, our boys. I felt this surge of pride when I first saw them marching up to the front. Young faces, clean uniforms, eyes full of courage and determination. I knew what was coming. First major American engagement I supported was near Soissons, September 1918. We were assigned to the 1st Division. They attacked German positions at dawn. By noon, I was hauling back American boys, our boys, speaking English with accents from Kansas and Texas and Maine, calling out for help in words I understood perfectly. Somehow that made it worse. A kid from Montana, couldn't have been more than 19. He grabbed my arm as I loaded him. Am I gonna make it, buddy? Tell me straight. Am I gonna make it? He wasn't. Stomach wound. Already septic. He'd be dead by nightfall. I told him he'd be fine. Another lie. I'd gotten good at lying. We worked 36 hours straight during that push. The Americans fought hard, took heavy casualties. The aid stations overflowed. The field hospitals overflowed. We were driving wounded all the way to Paris because there was nowhere else to put them. I stopped counting how many men I transported, stopped learning their names, stopped looking at their faces. They became cargo, units, problems to solve. Load 4, drive 12 miles, unload, return, repeat. That's how you survive. You stop seeing them as people. You stop seeing yourself as a person. You become part of the machine of war, a cog, a tool, useful until you break. I wondered sometimes what I'd become. If the person I used to be, William Hartford from Boston, Yale graduate, who liked poetry and sailing, if that person still existed somewhere inside this hollow thing I'd turned into. I didn't think so. That person had died somewhere in the mud of France. What drove the ambulance now was something else entirely. My breaking point came in October. Meuse-Argonne offensive, biggest American operation of the war. The casualties were staggering, thousands per day. The aid stations couldn't keep up. The hospitals couldn't keep up. We couldn't keep up. But they kept sending men over the top, kept feeding them into the meat grinder. I was on my 3rd straight day without sleep. Everything felt distant, unreal, like I was watching myself from outside my own body. I pulled up to an aid station to load wounded. There were maybe 50 men waiting, some on stretchers, some sitting in the mud, some just lying there. The medical officer pointed to 4 men. These ones, they've got the best chance. I looked at the others, at the ones being left behind. One of them was conscious, young kid, couldn't have been 20. He looked right at me, didn't say anything, just looked. I loaded the 4, started the engine. That kid was still looking at me. I couldn't do it, couldn't leave him. I got out, walked over to him, looked at his wounds. Leg was shattered, probably septic already. Chances of survival may be 20% if he got to a hospital in the next hour, 0% if he stayed here. I can't take you, I said. I'm sorry. I can't. I know, he said, voice quiet, calm. It's okay. It wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. I got back in the ambulance, started driving. Made it maybe a quarter mile before I had to pull over. I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. One of the wounded in the back called out, "Driver, you all right?" I wasn't all right. I was shaking. My vision was blurring. My chest felt like it was being crushed. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything I'd been holding back for 17 months came rushing in at once. Every broken body, every death, every scream, every face, every lie I'd told, every man I'd left behind. That kid's face, looking at me, understanding, accepting that he was going to die alone in the mud because there wasn't room for him in my ambulance. I drove to the hospital, unloaded the wounded, drove back to the motor pool, parked the ambulance, got out. I walked away, just started walking. No destination, no plan, just walked. They found me 6 hours later sitting by the side of the road. I don't remember getting there. Don't remember most of that day. They said I was catatonic, non-responsive. They sent me to a hospital in Paris, kept me there for 2 weeks. Shell shock, they called it. Even though I'd never been in combat, never fired a weapon, never charged a trench. But I'd seen everything the men in the trenches had seen, carried it, lived in it, breathed it. The war ended while I was in that hospital, November 11th, 1918. Everyone celebrated, dancing in the streets, champagne and singing and joy. I sat in my hospital bed and felt nothing. They shipped me home in December, said I'd done my duty, served with honor, made a difference. I wondered if they were lying to me the way I'd lied to all those wounded men. Probably. I'm 53 years old now, married, 2 children, work in my father's business like he always wanted, live in a nice house in Boston, have a good life by most measures. But I can't drive anymore. Haven't driven a car since 1919. Can't make myself get behind the wheel. My hands start shaking. My chest tightens. I see the road ahead, and all I can see is mud and shell craters and bodies. My wife drives. She doesn't ask why. She knows better. I can't go to hospitals either. The smell hits me, and I'm right back there. Back in France. Loading broken men into the back of that ambulance. Hearing them scream. Watching them die. My son wanted to be a doctor. I couldn't encourage him. Couldn't tell him why. How do you explain that you've seen too much medicine, too much death, that the idea of him cutting into bodies, trying to save lives, fills you with a dread you can't articulate? He became a lawyer instead, probably for the best. People thank me sometimes when they find out I served in the war. They say I did something noble, something important, saved lives. Maybe I did. I don't know. I remember the faces of the men I saved less than I remember the faces of the men I left behind. The ones who didn't make it into the ambulance, the ones who died in the back during the drive, the ones who looked at me with understanding when I told them I couldn't help them. I have nightmares still, not every night anymore, but often enough. I'm back in the ambulance driving through no man's land. The wounded are screaming in the back. The shells are falling, and no matter how fast I drive, I can never reach the hospital. The road just keeps going, forever, and the men keep dying, one by one, and I keep driving. I wake up and my wife is holding me, telling me it's okay, I'm safe, I'm home. But I'm not home. Part of me never left France. Part of me is still in that ambulance, still making the drive, still choosing who lives and who dies, still lying to boys who are bleeding out in my arms. They gave me a medal, Croix de Guerre. The French awarded it to all of us who served with their forces. It's in a drawer somewhere. I've never looked at it. What would I be looking at? A piece of metal that says I did my duty, that I carried broken bodies through hell for 17 months. That's not something to be proud of. It's just something I survived. The boy from Boston who wanted to help, who thought he could make a difference without firing a gun. He died in France, just like all the others. What came back wasn't whole, just pieces. Fragments held together by routine and responsibility and the effort of pretending to be alive. I drove an ambulance in the Great War, but I never came home. None of us did.